Leave it right there for the moment. Evening, everybody. Got some small white birch bowls to do. Goes along with the bigger one that I did a couple weeks ago, actually. Would be a salad bowl size. Got some rot on the outside edge here. Just trim a little bit of that back a little bit. Just so I get a better bite with the tailstock. Really doesn't, probably could do it without the tailstock, but I'd rather be a little bit on the safer side. As you can see, the tailstock just sinks right in because it's so soft and half rotten. And I didn't even take the time to make them round on the bandsaw. This is pretty much just as easy to do it this way. It forces you to make maybe a little better decisions on shape. We'll stand off to the side as usual. Bring our speed up till we get some vibration, which in this case probably won't be very high. Yeah, well, it's not too bad. Widen that out a little bit more. So get the whole thing on there. And I'll just get rid of this corner just like I would if I would have made it round. We'll get rid of the waste. As you can see, that it doesn't take very long to do it this way. You can bring a tool rest in pretty close because we're going to get rid of some material quickly. Get rid of a little bit more back here. This is the rotten stuff. And we can go back and start to make it into a little bit of a bowl shape. You can make some pretty aggressive cuts doing it this way too, because we're not cutting the whole way around. And this is white birch, it's very soft to start with. When you slow down and go off the end so that we don't splinter things up. We're getting closer. You can see that's where the bark was at, and it's quite punky. A couple more cuts and we'll have it round. We need to get some of this out here in the bottom. Definitely need some solid material. So we might as well figure out that first. There's another wormhole in it. Let's see if we can get rid of some of that wormhole. And wormhole goes pretty deep. Shoot. Wasn't planning on making it quite that shallow, but the wormhole would be right where, yeah, that's got it. Been right in the middle of the tenon. That would create us a bad spot right off the bat. I have quite a bit of this stuff too, so I'm not really too concerned. Doesn't cut very cleanly. And we're not quite there yet either. Get rid of the tailstock. Gonna have to watch there a little bit because that's worm screws in there fairly far. I did one of these earlier today, and it's kind of pretty stuff in a way. And I left a pretty big foot on it. Just so that it's a little bit different. So now we can finish shaping it. Let's go to the 40-degree gouge and see whether we can get a cleaner cut. Rid of the live center before I bang my arm on it. We're also going to be able to get our speed up to where we want it. Make things a little quicker. Kind of planning on that being the serving salad bowl to go with the big one, but that's kind of chintzy for that. But it's the outside cut cleanly. You need to get rid of a little bit more of this lat area in here. And I could sand it at this point, but just like with the other one, it was kind of like pointless because I'm going to come back in and redo that foot or make it into a foot. This time around, I could clean that foot up a little bit better than what it is, though. So now it's nice and flat. Not that that matters, but on the other one that I just did a little bit ago, I don't know, I got in a rush or something and never marked the center back on here, which makes it a real challenge to get it centered up to finish up the foot. Just created actually some more work. Just one other thing we could do would be you could go over here and clean up this rim a little bit. Knock off the razor blade. Coulda, shoulda did that before that. Way I would have known where the top was. Not that it really matters because it's going to be such a small, shallow kind of bowl. So that's got to cut the whole way around. Anywhere there's this spalding, it is very, very soft. Makes it a little bit different. I think in terms of making this into more of a production kind of a thing. Oh, he's got so cotton picking tight. And just to the outside, I have three more of them to do, or two more besides this one. I think what I'll do is I'll go grab them. I don't know that I had the hole drilled in them. Yeah, it's definitely plenty deep. I do have them marked as far as where to drill the hole. Oh, that hole's only that deep. All right. It's just a matter of drilling a hole in them. The hole has to be deep enough that it doesn't bottom out. Bottoms out, it'll strip the threads. And it won't hold nothing. We'll turn it down to a nice slow speed. And we'll let the lathe do the work. And let go a bit before it makes contact, where it'll whack you in the fingers. That's kind of the downfall of using the worm screw in that fashion. Probably shouldn't have square corners on it. But you gotta live a little dangerous some days. Like I say, this stuff is nice and soft, so the edge on the tool is actually holding up quite well. We'll just bring a tailstock up just for the extra cautionary moment. Just like the last one, I come across on an angle so we can get rid of this corner right off the bat. Standing out of the line of fire. Bring the speed up a little bit. This one's a little less balanced than the other one, but okay. We'll get it balanced up and around in for a couple minutes. You can actually see when I'm cutting, you can actually see the ghost image of the flat areas and see where they're at, and they're that they're still there. I guess we could do it in two views. Maybe that would make it a little difference. See what that looks like. Looks like it's a little on the bright side. Let me see if I can change. Not that one. No. White balance is on automatic. So try something. That makes it really yellow looking. This is it's a new camera for me, so it's kind of left things alone for some of it. One. It's still really bright. go the other way. See what it does. Yeah, that's what we needed. Alright, that made it less bright. Now I have sort of two different colors, but we're just going to leave it at that. I forgot I turned a camera off. There we go. Now you get to look at my ugly mug. Alright, back to the job at hand. Like I say, you can make some really heavy duty cuts because it is a softwood, and it's certainly not totally dry, or not even real dry. So now we got it in balance. So now we can speed things up. Should have looked down here at the base to see where we're at. Gonna need a little bit more off of down here. Not there yet. Getting close. There's some not so nice stuff. Another wormhole. Still part of the cambium layer right there too. But I think we can make this a little easier. Get rid of our tailstock. And it gives me that'll give me total access back here. Some worm activity right there too. Flatten that out a little bit. See whether we have all solid material. Looks like we do. I can mark a tenant and we know where we're going to. can get rid of some material. They're still not round up there, I'm sure. Nope. And we still have our wormhole. So I think we're going to waste my time with the tenant. We're going to have to go down deeper. Make a shallower bowl to get rid of the junk. Pushing, there we go. I'll get rid of that one. There is one there though. These might not work for the serving bowls for the salad bowl. But it's always worth a try. Not too sure, but what that little thing isn't even still there. I do believe it is. Get a trusty little pick out here and see if we can get him out. Maybe there is a little one, part of him. Little buggers. He might have been alive at one point. No more. How such a little itty bitty worm can create such a giant sized hole is beyond me, but they're usually bigger than that. So maybe that's a baby. Definitely going to leave a wormhole the whole way through. Still have some, it's got some, a little bit of the, I think that's really the pith, but it's had some little branches coming off of it. It's not a super clean cut. Not as clean as I would like it to be, put it that way. So we have our tenant marked. A little deeper so that we have a groove, or a, yeah, good solid place for the chuck to grab. And that really doesn't like the sort of the scraping cut that I just did there. Make sure that corner is nice and crisp in there, because that's where the chuck wants to grab. And before I run it over and grind, I'm going to see. One that looks like it's sharp. Try and leave the least amount of work I have to do in there. And that gouge is sharp, so that should have left me pretty clean surface. Still has some of that really punky part right there that's not going to necessarily clean up as nicely as it could, or that would you like it to. Can we do probably get in trouble with this? No, because I got to go back and cut in there some more anyhow. I'm going to say I could do something there, but something would probably just cause me problems. So we'll straighten up this rim a little bit. Knock off the razor blade edge. With the exception of a giant size hole. Don't look too bad. Do just a little bit of shear scraping in there. Just to see if it'll cut it cleanly. Probably not. Cleaner than what it was. So that's a plus. We need to mark our center. It's actually plugging up the end of my live center. Get that junk that was in there. We'll just give it a mark. It'll save me some issues in a little bit. The other one I actually did these right start to finish, sanded them and all. It's certainly not dry. These logs have been laying around for probably a year or two maybe, but they were still laying in a log up until about a week or so ago. They do really get tight. You don't need to worry about them coming loose. So do we have two matched ones? Nope, this one's smaller than the other one. Very difficult to try and get matching bowls, I think. So we'll do the other one. Same way. Drawer hole. And not get your fingers whacked. I put the plastic over the end grain, just the end grain. I'll go, as you can see, I went around this way, leaving this face open. Let it start to dry. This one still has some of the bark on. So that means there'll be things flying. This is just kind of like rinse and repeat, making sure that everything's cleared. We're going to stand off to the side. I'm going to go crazy on this one because this bark is going to go flying. But it didn't, but it will. Let's just see if we can get rid of it. It's got rid of the majority of it in there. And there was some more. A little chunk. Getting a little too aggressive. Have some nice spalding line in it. Now that we got rid of our bark, we're not going to get whacked in the head with it. Then we can bring the speed up. Make this go a little quicker. Really nice and slow off the end, where it doesn't send things flying. Still a tiny bit there. Still some punkiness there and there. I think we can get rid of our tailstock so we can know where we're going down there. And we'll just shrink it down a little bit in size because it doesn't. Because they're probably just over 6 inches across. We're probably about 7. So 3.5 would be more of the finished dimension depth that I would want. Yeah, it's the last little bit of bark. Mark our tenants so we know where we're going to. It's probably still too deep. And we still have some rotten to get off of there. So might as well do that first. I'll switch over to this other gouge that is sharp. So we still have a flat up there yet too. That's good. Still some rotten stuff right there. That's probably a wormhole. Still some rotten right there. So we'll shrink it a little bit more. Kind of like all about removing bad stuff or things you don't want. I like to keep as much of that gray as what I can. It is fairly soft though, right there at that edge. I think we'll be all right. It's a bit of a wormhole there. Not much of it left. So let's see. It's almost like right on the money for the tenant. So let's make our tenant here. And I'm making that tenant a little bit deeper than what I normally do because I will use that as the foot. Now I need to just sort of reshaping this a little bit down here, take a little bit more out. And that tears that up to pieces. Because it's a non-bevel supported cut when I'm doing that right there. So that doesn't, this stuff is too soft for that. This scraper would probably do worse yet. Just out of curiosity, we're going to try it a little bit. I won't look stupid tonight. I won't use it. I didn't make a traditional scraper. Watching Richard Raffin's videos too much. That'll at least give me a better shape, and it's really, yeah, really bad. So I have to go back and recut. Not everything likes the scraper. Can we be really brave? Put the tool rest back down. I don't have much to lose. Have lots to gain, but not much to lose. Certainly not quite spectacular. Let's go over it again. Let me just have that last little bit in there, but I'm gonna have to go back in there and cut when I do the foot. So sandable, not quite the sandable finish that I would rather have, but I did all right. Little ring mark will save me some time a little bit. Hardest part about some of these is actually just getting a hold of them. You can see why the production turners like to use that method, because it does make it very quick and easy. And it could have been a little smaller. It'll be okay. Should spin true. Yep. So I think we're going to have to go back and sharpen some gouges, I think. Or can we be just lazy enough? Probably not. And just flatten this off a little bit and make things a little bit easier. And find the bottom of that hole. Didn't quite get there. Well, that one ain't very sharp either. And the point don't like to stick in. That's generally good indication. It's not very sharp. That one is. I normally start out the day sharpening everything, but we're doing other things, so. Now we have to think about how thick we want it. We come out here and clean up this edge. And I'll come right around the corner with the cut. And I'll stop, take a look at it. I'm not going to make these real thin. I didn't make the other one very thin. It could be a little thinner than that, though. So just rinse and repeat. I'll come back out here. Make my cut a little bit thinner, a little thicker. That should be good. Like I said, this stuff is not sopping wet. I was able to sand the other ones. The other one, I should say, not other ones. So we can just keep on going down. We are fattening up a little bit. So that's the 40-degree gouge. That does not like to go around the corner, which is what I was starting to do. It's starting, you can see all the chewed up end grain right there. It does not like that at all. I'll switch back to the swept back grind. Take a little bit more out of there. That feels better. Fingers tell more than anything else. You'll be amazed when you start playing around with some of this stuff, what you can feel with your fingers. It's still thickening up a little bit in the middle right there, or right there. But I'm also running into more stuff in there, so can bring our tool rest in a little bit. Doesn't really help us much, but makes most people, it makes them more comfortable. So we'll start getting rid of some of this in the bottom. I'm pretty much going almost like straight across. I'm not really trying to go a lot deeper. Because we know we had to come back up there. We'll get that because we are using the tenon as our foot, so if I get down into that area, it's not going to matter. My fingers are telling me there's a ridge in there. So get rid of the rest of this. Now come back up there. Nice and slow. Make one nice cut right to the center. Get to the center, I'm going to stop and I'll just nibble that off a little bit. Don't want to break it off, but don't want to leave a dimple or a hole in the middle. Better off if I leave a little tiny little nub sticking up. And now we'll just feel with our fingers. We did leave a divot in there. So we're going to have to... So I'm looking elsewhere when I stick my fingers in there. I don't look in the hole. Let your fingers tell you what it's doing, because right about there is where I need to pick it up and make it cut the whole way across. So I can put my tool up there away from the wood. And that's where I'm going to pick up my cut. It's not going to be a big cut. But I want it to be a curve the whole way through. I don't want the bottom to be flat. It feels pretty good. Some of this soft stuff up here is a little chewed up, but that'll sand right off. It's not really that difficult. That is what we're going to do, though. I think I need to get new sandpaper. Yeah. So 120, 150, 180, 240, 320, 400, 600. I do have 800s, but I don't very seldom ever use those. To me, that's just a little bit overkill. And the 2-inch pads that I was using earlier, I won't necessarily throw them away right away, because you can see, even though it's a 2-inch pad, it really shows up on this one. There's still like a 1-inch circle in here that you really don't hardly ever touch when you're using these. So that's, I have a little 1-inch mandrel that I do certain stuff with. So I'll just take them and cut the 1-inch circle out of them, and then I use them that way. I don't need the hard pad. I want the soft pad the whole way. little dust collection. I start with 120. I go right into the center part, knock that little nub off. This stuff is not really totally dry. It'll take a little bit. It'll dry the surface off as I sand. There's always a trouble spot on either side where you're going to have some grain that stood up. So if I do that by hand without it running, it'll help me get it done quicker, easier. We're going to slow our speed down. About 500-600 RPM, something like that. Now we're looking for anything that's any torn grain, anything really chewed up. Sort of chewed up on that edge a little bit. Now we got rid of any and all any of the tool marks that were there. Now we can actually sand to a smooth finish. So that was 150. Make a small jump to 180, and then we'll stop and check it again. If you notice, I go across, I'm going to on the right side, and I come back over to this left side. A lot of people talk about standing in forward and reverse, switching, like each grit go the opposite direction. And that just basically did that for me on the inside without changing the direction. Use a paintbrush to get rid of the excess sawdust in there. More importantly, any little bits of the grit comes off the sandpaper. I'm going to stop and take a look. Make sure. I'm looking for deep scratches, like right there some. That I should have gotten earlier that didn't. Let's see if we can get it with the 320. This is kind of the pain of working with real soft wood. And leave some scratches behind that normally don't appear on something harder. And if you wanted to, you could certainly sand this by just with sandpaper. Man, are these. Should have looked a little harder. These are sanding scratches. A little bit of picked up grain right there to go with it. If you were going to use a flat type of finish on it, it wouldn't hurt to have those scratches in there. So this will get a fairly glossy finish. So all that'll do is magnify them. There we go. Well, I should have taken the 2 seconds out to stop and look. Yeah, we're in good shape. Definitely want a nice smooth rim. That's good. It looks like there could be some little scratches in there. Probably partly because this stuff is not totally dry. So now we can flip it around and do the inside and the bottom. And we're gonna have to go sharpen some tools, probably just to even get started right on that. Just take them, put them around the corner, get this set up, and then we'll go sharpen that stuff. And this is where a little indentation comes into play, because now it should spin pretty true, and it does. So that's what we're looking for. This is going to take a fairly good amount of sanding. It's easier to do it now than if we would, because like I say, I know they're not totally dry. I won't be able to finish these tonight, put finish on them. Might grab the moisture meter and see what it says, but they're fairly cold they're not super cold to the touch, but they're cold to the touch, which is an indication that there's moisture there. As I put the dust hose right in front of everything. So turn the noisemaker off for the moment, because we're going to go over here and we're going to sharpen all this stuff up. And then we'll be ready to do some stuff. I think I'm going to have to get a garbage bag out too. Oh, it says grinder. Why is that not? Huh. Maybe I don't have that one no more. I screwed around with some of these scenes. Ah, that's what I did. I added one where it didn't belong. There we go. So now we can do a handful at a time. I guess we'll start with our swept back grind bowl gouges. As these get old, like this one is, it becomes very challenging to get it centered in the jig. It's just kind of an eyeball appearance. Because when I don't get it back in centered, that means I'm going to grind more material off. To get it back to where I want it. So an already short bowl gouge becomes that much shorter. And I think this one, yeah, I had changed the setting on this a little bit on the grinding jig. So that's one. Really doesn't take that long to come over here and sharpen your tools. It's much nicer, easier to work with sharp tools than it is dull tools. Much safer, because when the tool gets dull, then you're going to push on it harder. You have to grind a little bit more, a little extra on each of these, because, like I say, I changed this jig setting a little bit. This is a 350 grit wheel, so doesn't remove a whole lot of material at one time. But it leaves a really nice, sharp, clean edge. All the way around. This is another one that's getting back to where it's beyond the flute. So it doesn't necessarily center itself like it would if it was sitting on the flutes. So that. I'll switch jigs. This jig is set up to do the 40-degree grind. And what changes is the angle that this wing is at. Grind a flat side, roll over the nose. That's really all there is to it. I do it with the jig. A lot of people tell you you cannot do that grind other than freehand on a platform, but I had somebody teach me how to do it. And to me, this is easier. It's easier for me. I get a consistent grind every time. Or if you do it by hand, you're going to go through a lot of tools till you get good at it. And to me, you get frustrated with it to do it by hand. This is a little 3/8 inch bowl gouge. Don't use it a lot. It actually has the 40-degree grind on it. One of these days I'm probably going to put it back to the swept back grind. It does a good job in doing like detail work. Last but not least will be the spindle gouge. Which is also another one that's sort of getting short. That will be an investment come September. This one we have to move the arm to get the angle right. And that should be it. We did not use the clean cut one, so less than 5 minutes, something like that. And we're ready to go back into action. And we'll go back to there. So the only one I need to deal with is my spindle gouge it has a handle that has the little screws in it, and it's a very short handle. We did a little hands-on kind of night at their wood turning club almost a month ago, and there was a lady demonstrated some spindle turning with a long-handled tool. She came over there and goes, "Your tool handle's really short." I'm like, "Yes," and I showed her why. She's like, "Well, I like that." She didn't want to try it, but she thought my philosophy on why I did it was kind of a sound philosophy, I guess. So now the first order of business is to do the foot. We're going to start out slow. We'll bring our speed up to what we're comfortable with. I won't turn it as fast as what it was in the chuck. First things first, make this square again. We'll come in from the upper side, and we'll dig in that corner. Come around and lay our bevel on, and sort of roll a little bead into that corner. When I get into that corner, I'm up 90 degrees, so it's basically a little negative rake scraper in there, which on this stuff is not going to give me a really nice clean finish for sure. I'm going to try and go back the other way. One may actually create more of a problem, like that. Get too far in there. Now our foot's going to shrink a little bit. I don't even need to stop and look. I know what it did. It put huge gouges in. It's still there. So we got to take it down a little bit more. So what I did, instead of it wasn't quite totally rolled over, and that tip got in against that and just grabbed a hold of it. And notice I stopped to do that. It's a quick way to get your fingers in between the bowl and the tool rest. And it will hurt. Trust me. You won't do it very many times. So we'll do it as a little sort of scraping cut. And you can just basically scrape this corner off and make it into a bead. Somewhat of a bead. That'll be a place that we'll have to sand quite a bit. Although I should need to try and cut that cleanly. Even though now it doesn't really look like a bead. But the sandpaper will take that hump off the top. I can even scrape a little bit off of there. Lute's pretty much closed to do that. Not going to get too carried away with it. We've already undercut this one. So that was something I did earlier. It did chew that up a little bit, but that's kind of typical. But the underside of this, which is much harder to sand, is cut cleanly. So now we can give it a sand. I didn't use a 3-inch one on the last one, but I think we're going to try and make it a little, maybe a little easier. See whether we block the view. Nope, not too bad. This time we will spin in reverse. Turn the dust collector on. The reason I spin it in reverse is you'll see really quickly all the dust goes right into the dust collector chute, and not back in my face. Now we're going to stop and inspect for sure. The only thing is I can't really get totally into that corner. I should be able to get in there a little better than I did though. I can do that little corner by hand. It would be better if it was going in forward rather than reverse. That way it doesn't try and pull the sandpaper out of my hand. And that again will be 120 grit sandpaper right there. And we'll stop and inspect. There's still a little bit left on the top there, but I use regular sheet paper to take care of that. Back to reverse. Put a little too much pressure on it. Like I say, it's softer the wood, the lighter the touch. These sort of look very plain right now, but I was very pleasantly surprised that the really big color variations that there is, even though it doesn't really show it now. Give this corner a little extra round. Once again, sort of best done by hand. Actually, right at this point, I need to be sanding this right along with it, or sand this complete before I do the rest. Go the whole way up to the grits. Trying to get it to be more round and pointy. So that was 220. I guess I will go right straight through the 600 right on here. And I'll do it right now because when I stand in that groove, I'm getting out beyond, well beyond that groove. And when I sand with sheet paper, I will go the whole way to 800 to try and keep those little scratch patterns as small as possible. So you can say I'm missing one. I didn't sand with that one. Lastly, we'll hit with 600. That's basically ready for finish at this point. All we have left to do is take the last little bit of the tenon off, or last little evidence. I'll turn the vacuum pump on. That's what my little jam chuck was to start with, was a vacuum. As you can see, it's quite substantial. As long as it creates a good seal. And we don't have the best seal on it for some reason, or it's pulling. All we have to do is get rid of that last little bit in the middle, which is right where you could go, right where I could go through the middle. Looks to me like we've already concaved it more than enough, more than what I should have. And it does have to go in forward though. Didn't get quite all that out of there though. Doesn't sound like it's hollow. When you tap on it, you'll know pretty quickly that it's getting very thin. And I think we're just going to kind of bite the bullet and just sand it. Like I said, this stuff is super soft, so rather than keep on going, and theoretically I could leave that little ring right there too. It really wouldn't hurt anything. But I will put some lines in it anyhow. I'll sand with the grain across the center. The center's hardly moving, so it takes forever to try and get that off. So if you do a little bit by hand, you'll save a whole lot of aggravation. You can do little circles across there. That'd be good enough. Clean it off. Go right through the grits. We need a place to sign our name, put the type of wood and our name on there. I will give it 2 little lines. And only 2. Because if I put the 3rd one in, then I have to measure. And I don't want to do that. So lastly, we'll see them with 800 across there. Clean up those edges that we just tore up. And that's it. You can see it did pull some moisture through. Lift a little ring in there, which is okay. I'll let that dry, and I'll take a little bit of 800 grit sandpaper, and I'll make sure that I get rid of that ring by hand. Like I say, they're still fairly cold. They're not super cold to the touch, but they're cold enough that they're going to have to dry. Hopefully it doesn't distort too much down here. If it does, I can still put it back on the vacuum chuck and redo some of this down here if need be. But hopefully not. So that's 2. Take our vacuum hose off. It's just a very simple homemade, that's a homemade vacuum chuck. It's just a piece of, it's a PVC collar, I think is what that one is. Has wooden threads on it. Everything has to be sealed though, quite well sealed. The vacuum is an interesting thing to mess with because it just doesn't, it does things that you wouldn't imagine that it could do. Let's pull air through the, like the vacuum chuck. If I didn't have that sealed, it would actually pull air right through the end grain and not create the vacuum that I want or need to do my work. So where are we at? End grain. I put the end grain up and down with the jaws. Gives me the most consistent grip the whole way around it. And then we are back to business. Pick some tools up. Lay them in the drawer. I gotta get the tailstock out of the road because we don't need it for this particular situation. Although, you put everything away, you do need a tool or 2. Short one. No, not that one. That one. Trying to use this one up. This is an old Sorby one. As you can see, I got about 2 inches or so loot left. Once I get down into here, I'm going to make this into a little 1/2 inch skew. Is what the plan is. So we're in forward. We're going to slow things down. It should run true if we did everything right. Then we can bring it up to our speed that they're comfortable with. And I grabbed the wrong one. Get the other one first. I want to flatten this out. Makes it a little bit easier to pick up your cut. You don't have an uneven surface right there. Now I'll go back to the 40-degree gouge and get rid of the center. Close the flute to pick up the cut. That's why it's skated. Remember, this is quite shallow, so I don't want to get carried away on how deep I go right there. But if I put my nose basically right there, I can look at the left side and the right side as it's spinning, and you can get pretty good, pretty proficient at it. Now we'll make our little curved in entry. I could stop and look and make sure that we did what we thought we did. It looks good. So it has some really nice spalding in it. Also still some punky stuff in it. So we're still about an inch thick right there, according to my fingers. So we know we can get down some of that. Now I'll switch back to the 60-degree because it's going to allow me to go around this corner, which is what we're going to have to do here. And we're going to stop and verify. A little thicker. Thicker is better than thin. You just have to watch because right there where I stopped cutting at, we're not that overly, there's a little bit of room there, but not a lot. Actually, it sounds like that's thin. Definitely don't want to go any deeper. Actually feels like I'm actually fat up here, but I probably cannot. I think we're going to try it, but this is generally where you'll get in trouble. You can't hear it because of the noise cancellations, but it probably just put all kind of ridges in there. Doesn't feel like it, but it was squealing, which is telling you that it's too thin, and I'm putting too much pressure on it. So just leave it as is. Just sand a little bit harder up there than the bottom. We'll just take this across. Nice little itty bitty cuts. another little pass across there. I've left, once again, your fingers tell all. There's a little hump right there. There's a couple ways you can go about that. You can actually use a scraper. This is not going to work well with a scraper, but it'll get me the curve. Because it is a very big radius scraper. Actually, that's a surprise. Usually that does not. Yeah, it did right there. I say there's usually some place that really stands a grain up. Need a paper towel for that. It's going a little too fast to put my fingers back there. So that did stand a grain up right there, but I don't. Now I have a nice flowing curve. So I think from there we'll just sand it. Be nice to say that I'd make a nice simple cut across there, but I know very good and well that we're getting a little bit close to the bottom. Closer than what I need to be. And we're pretty much right down to the chuck now. So undercut underneath there a little bit. It's where you have to say, well, I have to sand an extra minute or two. Well, that's better than the alternative of making a nice clean cut across there and end up with a funnel. It's been a while since I've made a funnel, but it's not beyond me that I would not do that. So we'll find that little area and we'll hit it hard with 120 grit paper, and it'll be gone in a matter of a couple seconds. Like I say, this stuff is super soft. As you can see by the amount of dust that come off of it right away. And our speed slowed down. Need to look at something here quickly. No. So that was our 120. We got rid of any places where there was picked up grain. This one actually feels wetter than the other one did, but it actually will dry as I sand it somewhat. Because I'm creating some heat and friction. Well, I missed some 120 scratches right there. It's pretty much always where they're going to be. Must be an extra soft spot right there. If in a week or so from now, when these are officially dry, if I need to go back and sand some more, and I want to power sand, right there's how I will power sand them. They don't have to be perfectly round to power sand them. As you can see, it'll spin in the drill will make it spin. Sometimes I do a lot of natural edge stuff. So that's sort of one way that I sand them. If I've gotten creative and went right to final thickness right off the bat. It is, of course, much easier not to do that, but Inside complete for today. I would think, I would assume, because there's some places that's not quite up to par. I will have to do a little bit of something with them before I put finish on them, but they need to dry. Just like the last one, we'll put our little vacuum chuck on, and that will be our way of holding it. Just enough force on it that it won't slip. I'm not cranking down on that if I don't need to, for one, and I don't want to. But once again, that should spin relatively true. That one doesn't spin quite as true as it should. That's worse. I didn't make a very big mark on there. That'll be good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to make it round again. And all we're going to mess with is the tenon. We'll take a little bit of that off. And we'll get in here and undercut it. And I probably did. That didn't do too bad that time. A little bit torn up right there. Not drastic. Like I say, this stuff is not necessarily overly friendly with that. We'll undercut. Really just want enough of an undercut there so that it sits out here on the outside rim. Use a little bit more in the middle. Stuff just does not really like to cut nice and neat like it should. That is the wonders of the soft woods. Definitely a sandable finish. Get that out of the road a little bit. I do have some 120 grit sandpaper that I can use. And we don't want to go 90 mile an hour to do it though. I'm just using the edge of it to get in that groove. Because it had some nice stood up grain in there. So a little extra time sanding. We'll blend that into that corner and come out a little bit. See if we could use a little bit more in there. This is a cloth back paper, so what I just did was tore off some of it. The sandpaper is just like any of the cutting tools. Gets dull fairly quickly. If you wanted to, you could sand this whole thing by hand, just like this. It's a little bit more time consuming, I think. Also, you can see it put beautiful scratches. If I was to zoom in, it put perfect little scratches the whole way around, all in line with one another. That's why I like the power sanding. It doesn't do that so much. So it's quicker, easier. Easy's good in my book. So once again, we're in reverse. And we started with 120. Got a little bit of a rotten spot right there. That'll work. I was lucky it didn't go in a dust chute. Usually if I drop it, it's in a dust collector. So there we might as well. Back to our vacuum. And we're going to need a ruler. Yeah. All we got to do is take that off. It's already undercut forward. Nice gentle approach, leaving a little nub in the bottom. Last check. We're only going to sit on that outside rim, which is what I wanted to do. And hit the tailstock. You could power sand this too. I do that from time to time, but just as easy to sand this just that little bit with sheet paper. Sheet paper is also much cheaper. It's also some places somebody's going to look to. They're going to look for two reasons. Number one, that's normally where the price tag would be. Now, a lot of people were really sort of adamant about, did you sign your work? And I will put on there the type of wood and my initials. I don't put the date on. Some people put the date on. I don't. Not one of them. This is where the curiosity kills the cat. But I don't think this is going to cooperate with the finish. So we're going to try. What I've done is release the vacuum because I can't have the vacuum pulled on there and put finish on it because it'll pull it right straight through. But we're going to try it once. Use some of my favorite products. And I need a glove. This is a product we're going to use. This is the Parfix 3460. It's a slow setting CA glue. It will only take one coat and then we'll buff it from there. It definitely won't get buffed today. That'll be another day. It has a 24-hour cure time, so it's not in your best interest to go from putting it on to buffing it. I'm thinking this is probably not going to work because CA glue cures in the presence of moisture. So if we put this on here and it right away sets up, we'll know that there's way too much moisture in there. Although it doesn't look like it is. That's a good plus. So I could have been finishing all these, it looks like. There's also another one that's 3408 that's even thinner yet than this. The reason I don't use the 3408 on this stuff is because it's so soft and so porous, it just keeps drinking it in and doesn't really fill up the pores quite like this will. Another one of them trial and errors. This also is going to show you what they're going to look like finished. Of course, there's always that one difficult spot, and that's right there. So we'll just dribble some in, that crack, that groove, and it'll be nice and it'll run the whole way around for me. I won't worry about the very bottom at this point. Those are the wonders of it being a slow setting CA glue. It has about a 45 to 50 second time delay before it starts to set up. So that allows me to do what I'm doing here. Could not do this with regular CA glue. That's your normal CA glue that sets up quickly. It would already be set up and you'd have a mess. So what I've done is saturated it, and now we're going to wipe off the excess because I only want what's soaked into the wood. I don't want the excess that's sitting on the surface because that won't be smooth. This stuff here, we're not going to get a whole lot back off of it. We were doing some really hard wood with the 3408. It will sit on the surface once you get enough of it on, and then you wipe the excess off. That's it. It don't get any easier than this as far as I'm concerned. That's also why I'm a distributor of the product, because to me, it's just too simple to use. I'm going to activate it a little bit because since it's going to cooperate, I'm going to do both sides. So give a can a good shake at 18 to 24 inches away. I'll give it one spray on that side, one spray on that side. And I'm spraying up here. I'm not spraying directly on it. I'm spraying up here so the mist lands down on top of it. So right now it's dry to the touch. Bare finger, you wouldn't want to sit there and try and hold it as long as what you could possibly do, but because you have moisture in your fingers, in your skin, so it could draw some of it right back up to the surface and stick to your finger. So that is the inside done. Now the question is going to be, did I take too much off of that tenant? Probably. Well, it won't fall out. Famous last words. I took a little bit, ideally I don't want to do it that way though. Ideally would have been to have left that to where this would be a perfect circle down to about there or a little more. and then I could grip it, and the jaws would go down in the groove and not leave any marks. And I'm pretty sure I can look. If I go down to the next size, jaws is going to be too small, I think. Yeah, that would leave marks. So we'll just do it this way. It's going to hold it well enough for me. It'll wobble around, as you can see, but it doesn't fall out. So that's really all I'm concerned about, so that it doesn't fall out on me, because that could make a mess. We'll get 2 more paper towels, another little piece of polyester. Oh, I need where. I need to sand that little bit in there to get rid of that ring. So just get rid of that by hand. This is 800 grit sandpaper. It's a little random orbit right there in the very center, where it left that mark from the still in there. So what I do is widen that out. That's as wide as it'll go. What I do, I'll put it up here on top of the chuck. You'll be able to see it that way. Little square polyester felt, and I just roll it up into the paper towel. Gives me a little reservoir. Helps not make a mess. And I fold it over nice and neat. It gives me a nice little applicator pad. Throwaway applicator pad, of course, but we've already done the outside, so the inside will take less material to do. I'm going to use my trusty little fingers to hold it somewhat. Here's where I will get super glue on my fingers, though, guaranteed. Should put another glove on, would be smarter. Basically, it's a rinse and repeat of the outside. Like I said, the inside will take less because the outside has been sealed. You filled the pores up so the air can't pull it through. So whichever side you do first, the second side takes less material. And it doesn't really take a ton of material to start with. Okay, be that way. Well, at least it didn't fall on the chips. So we'll just wipe the excess off by hand, holding it and getting super glue on my left hand a little bit. That's it. That's all there is to it. Do the same as we did on the outside. I will hit it with the activator. One little mist, 2 little mists across, shooting up here, let the mist land on it, and it's done. Let it go for its 24 hours. I also have to sign the back of it. I will probably do that tomorrow sometime. It'll give it it'll get a nice high satin shine to it. Sort of about what it looks like right now when it's wet. That's about the shine that it'll get out of it. But it'll be silky smooth. It'll get buff with buffing wheels and Vonex, which is a buffing compound, and then a coat of carnauba wax on top of that. And they'll be done. It, like I say, it don't get much simpler than that. But we're not going to be creative and do any of the other ones tonight. I'm going to let them go. Because it's about time to call it a day. We do still actually do have one more to hollow out, but I'm not going to worry with that one tonight. That'll be another day. What I will do with it though, and clean up here a little bit, put some stuff away. I will bury it in the, there's a pile of shavings right here from the last couple. So what I'll do is take and cover that up with shavings, keep the air off of it, and hopefully don't come down. Remember that it's there and not to come down and pick that pile of shavings up and throw it in the trash bag. Other than that, that's pretty much it for me. Anybody have any questions or comments? Otherwise, we're going to see if we can find somebody to raid into. Clean up the mess tomorrow. The wonders. Hey, you're quite welcome. This stream is also being broadcast on YouTube as well. If you have any interest in watching things on YouTube, I have a YouTube channel as well. It's under Kapps Kreations. That way it stays there. So, where am I going? So I will end that stream on the YouTube side first. And then